In 1991, while most college students were worried about finals and weekend parties, 20-year-old Tim Sweeney was hunched over a computer in his parents' basement in Potomac, Maryland, coding what would become one of the most audacious challenges to big tech's monopolistic practices in modern history. That basement-born company, Epic Games, would grow from selling shareware games through the mail to becoming the creator of Fortnite, the Unreal Engine powering 60% of all major video games, and ultimately the David that dared to sling stones at Apple's $90 billion App Store Goliath. This is the story of how a shy programmer's obsession with creative freedom built an empire worth over $30 billion and sparked a legal war that would reshape the entire digital economy. Sweeney's journey began with ZZT, a quirky adventure game he programmed entirely by himself and sold through mail order catalogs for $50. While ID Software was grabbing headlines with Doom and Wolfenstein, Sweeney was quietly revolutionizing game development from the ground up, writing his own graphics engines, sound systems, and networking code. His second game, Jill of the Jungle, sold over 30,000 copies and established Epic Mega Games as a legitimate player in the shareware revolution. But Sweeney wasn't content just making games, he was obsessed with the technology that made games possible. By 1996, he had assembled a small team and was working on something that would change everything. A first-person shooter called Unreal that would showcase the most advanced 3D graphics engine anyone had ever seen. The Unreal Engine didn't just render pretty pictures, it was a complete development ecosystem that allowed other creators to build worlds limited only by their imagination. When Unreal launched in 1998, it didn't just compete with Quake and Half-Life. It democratized game development by licensing its engine to other studios for just $350,000 plus royalties. The engine business transformed Epic from a game developer into the infrastructure provider for an entire industry. By 2000, the Unreal Engine was powering blockbuster franchises like Deus Ex, Splinter Cell, and BioShock, generating millions in licensing revenue while Sweeney's team continued pushing technological boundaries. The 2006 launch of Gears of War on Xbox 360 proved that Epic could still create hit games while simultaneously showcasing Unreal Engine 3's capabilities to the world. That game sold over 6 million copies and established Epic as both a premier developer and the go-to technology partner for studios wanting cutting-edge graphics without building engines from scratch. But Sweeney was already thinking bigger. He watched the rise of Steam and saw how Valve was becoming the gatekeeper of PC gaming through their distribution platform. Unlike most developers who grudgingly accepted Valve's 30% cut as the price of doing business, Sweeney began formulating a different vision. What if creators could keep more of their revenue and reach audiences directly? The mobile revolution of the late 2000s validated Sweeney's concerns about platform control while simultaneously creating new opportunities. Apple's App Store, launched in 2008, quickly became the dominant way people discovered and purchased digital content. But it came with the same 30% tax that Valve imposed on Steam. Google's Android followed suit, and suddenly two companies controlled access to billions of mobile users while taking massive cuts from every transaction. Meanwhile, Epic continued evolving the Unreal Engine, making it free for educational use in 2014, and then completely free for all developers in 2015, charging only a 5% royalty after a project earned its first $1 million in revenue. This move wasn't just generous, it was strategic warfare against competitors like Unity, positioning Unreal as the people's engine, while Epic built goodwill throughout the development community. By 2016, over 4 million developers were using Unreal Engine 4, creating everything from indie darlings to massive AAA productions like Fortnite, Mass Effect, and Borderlands. Fortnite's 2017 Battle Royale mode explosion wasn't just a gaming phenomenon, it was Epic's proof of concept for bypassing traditional gatekeepers entirely. Within months of launch, Fortnite had 125 million players, generating hundreds of millions in revenue through cosmetic purchases and battle passes. But Epic's real innovation wasn't the game itself, it was how they distributed it. On PC, Epic launched Fortnite through their own launcher, avoiding Steam's 30% cut entirely. On consoles, they negotiated directly with Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo. But on mobile, Epic faced an impossible choice. Pay Apple and Google their 30% tribute or abandon 4 billion mobile users. They grudgingly submitted to both app stores while publicly criticizing the mobile duopoly's excessive fees.
Fortnite's success gave Sweeney unprecedented leverage and a massive war chest. Epic raised $1.25 billion in 2021 alone, reaching a $28.7 billion valuation, while maintaining Sweeney's controlling stake in his vision of an open digital ecosystem. Armed with Fortnite's success and fresh capital, Epic launched the Epic Games Store in December 2018 with a radical proposition. Developers could keep 88% of their revenue instead of the industry standard 70%. Epic didn't just undercut Steam's pricing, they spent hundreds of millions giving away premium games like Grand Theft Auto 5, Control, and Metro Exodus to attract users to their platform. Within 2 years, Epic Games Store had attracted over 160 million users and paid out over $700 million to developers. But Sweeney's ultimate target wasn't Steam or other PC platforms where users could choose alternatives. It was the mobile duopoly, where Apple and Google had created what Epic called walled gardens that locked out competition. Epic's internal documents revealed a deliberate strategy called Project Liberty, designed to break open these closed ecosystems through a combination of legal challenges, public pressure, and coordinated resistance from other major developers. The war officially began on August 13th, 2020, when Epic pushed a secret update to Fortnite on both iOS and Android that offered players a choice: pay the standard price through Apple or Google's payment systems, or pay 10% less through Epic's direct payment option. This wasn't just a discount, it was a direct violation of both companies' terms of service and a calculated provocation designed to trigger the exact response Epic was expecting. Within hours, both Apple and Google removed Fortnite from their app stores, cutting off Epic's access to millions of mobile players. But Epic was ready with pre-recorded videos, pre-written blog posts, and pre-filed lawsuits in federal courts. Their 1980 Fortnite video, a parody of Apple's famous 1984 Super Bowl commercial, positioned Epic as the freedom fighter against Apple's totalitarian control over digital commerce. The message was clear. Epic wasn't just fighting for their own profits. They were fighting for every developer, every creator, and every consumer trapped in Apple's controlled ecosystem. Epic's legal strategy was unprecedented in its scope and sophistication, targeting not just Apple's 30% commission, but the entire concept of forced payment processing and app distribution monopolies. Their complaint argued that Apple had violated antitrust laws by tying App Store distribution to Apple's payment processing system, preventing developers from offering customers alternative payment methods or even informing them about cheaper options outside the app. Epic's case was strengthened by Apple's own emails and internal documents showing deliberate efforts to maintain their walled garden and prevent what Apple executives called disintermediation, the dreaded possibility that customers might bypass Apple's payment systems entirely. The lawsuit revealed that Apple generated over $20 billion annually from App Store commissions, while spending only a fraction of that amount on actually operating the store. Epic argued that this massive profit margin proved Apple was abusing their monopoly position, rather than charging fair fees for legitimate services.
The courtroom battle that followed exposed the hidden economics of the entire digital ecosystem, while Tim Sweeney positioned himself as the reluctant warrior fighting for creative freedom against corporate tyranny. Epic's legal team presented evidence that Apple's 30% fee far exceeded the actual costs of payment processing and app distribution, while Apple's lawyers argued that their integrated ecosystem provided security, privacy, and user experience benefits that justified their commission structure. The trial featured dramatic testimony from Sweeney himself, who explained that Epic wasn't seeking monetary damages. They wanted injunctive relief that would force Apple to allow alternative payment systems and third-party app stores on iOS devices. Epic's case was supported by other major companies including Spotify, Match Group, and even some smaller developers who joined as amicus briefs, all arguing that Apple's restrictions stifled innovation and inflated prices for consumers. Judge Yvonne Gonzalez Rogers' September 2021 ruling was a partial victory for both sides that satisfied neither completely, but established crucial precedents for future digital commerce. While she rejected Epic's core argument that Apple operated an illegal monopoly in the mobile gaming market, she ruled that Apple's anti-steering provisions violated California's unfair competition law by preventing developers from informing customers about alternative payment options. The injunction required Apple to allow developers to include buttons, external links, and other calls to action directing customers to purchasing mechanisms beyond Apple's in-app purchase system. However, Epic was ordered to pay Apple over $3 million in damages for breaching their developer agreement, and Fortnite remained banned from the App Store pending Epic's compliance with Apple's terms of service. Both companies immediately appealed different aspects of the ruling, ensuring the legal battle would continue for years while the broader implications rippled throughout the tech industry. The Epic versus Apple confrontation transcended a simple business dispute to become a defining moment in the struggle between creative independence and platform control that will shape the digital economy for decades to come. Sweeney's 30-year journey from basement programmer to digital revolutionary demonstrates how technical excellence, strategic vision, and moral conviction can challenge even the most entrenched monopolies. Epic's empire, built on the twin foundations of the Unreal Engine and Fortnite's cultural phenomenon, generated over $5.1 billion in revenue in 2021, while maintaining Sweeney's original commitment to empowering creators rather than exploiting them. The company's willingness to sacrifice Fortnite's mobile revenue, estimated at over $200 million annually, to fight for systemic change proved that some principles matter more than short-term profits. Whether Epic ultimately succeeds in breaking open Apple's walled garden, their challenge has already forced regulators worldwide to scrutinize big tech's monopolistic practices while inspiring other companies to demand more equitable terms from platform holders. Tim Sweeney built more than a gaming empire. He built a movement that dared to imagine a digital world where creators control their own destiny and competition thrives on merit rather than monopolistic gatekeeping.